Hi, welcome to Conversation with Gift Patrick. I know this period we are in right now is it's kind of a trying times. I would love to tell you more about coronavirus, but I think there are so many media outlets who's already doing that and giving you so many news to be scared of. So I'm going to take you away from that and talk about the benefit of starting small and building your dreams, because I think after this pandemic period we are in right now, there's going to be a lot of reason for us to start small and think of those times that we had dreams and ideas that we never really built on. And that's why I have today's guest, who I personally consider a trailblazer, my mentor, my boss, and one of the co-founders of the top content creation companies in the United States, Mitch Stoller.
Hello, thanks.
Thank you so much for
Thank
joining me, Mitch. Like,
Pleasure.
you could have been in so many meetings making millions of dollars today, but you choose to be here.
Maybe not today.
Maybe not today, but this is a free masterclass for anyone who have an idea, who has a dream or thinking of building anything big or small tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, the excitement of starting small is obviously it's your thing, it's your baby. I think there's another reason starting small is very interesting, is because it tends to be more successful. And by small, we don't mean it necessarily a small idea, but something that's focused, right?
Yes.
It's very hard to take on, a big marketplace. You'll always hear people talk about, the total addressable market, the TAM. And that's important, but it's pretty daunting.
Yes.
So if you look at how we started SJR, we didn't start it knowing that we were going to turn into a content company.
Yeah.
And that's something we evolved into, and we evolved into it by trying things and having to say, okay, this is where we think we can really, really deliver something that other people can't do. Yeah. And that was really in very sophisticated content that often had a B2B or a B to influencer or a science or technology or financial component. And that's how we built a business that really did a lot for clients and separated it from the pack.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned how you started SJR and how you kind of talked about your idea. For those of you who don't know, Group SJR is a 15 years company.
Been around for about 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah, it was acquired by WPP in 2013. It's a full service content, strategy and development firm, and there's few like it in terms of the depth of resources across the company, from writers to designers to strategists.
Yeah. And just you are a definition of starting small and building your dreams.
We do.
Because you and your co-founders did exactly that.
Exactly, with Alex Jutkowitz and Billy Sind, and then later Tom Blim and Margaret Sullivan and many, many people along the way. We started small and we found a way to do stuff. And I think, the interesting parallels in today's world, this was a while back. The internet made it easier to compete as an agency business, because it was easier to share information. You didn't require the infrastructure. In the old days, people needed big production departments. You needed mail rooms. And the same thing has happened with brands today, right? So you see immense competition in the direct-to-consumer space, which my view of that is it just means brands going to people, right, with it. Now, that's gotten a lot of criticism lately because Casper's IPO, and it doesn't look like it's a business is going to meet its expectations, which were rather enormous, but that's a huge change. So but taking aside the headline, there's lots of interesting businesses that are very creative where people are building things that will be good. Yeah. Not everything has to be a unicorn, right? There's lots of good stuff you can do without having a unicorn.
Yeah. And talking about good stuff, sometimes when you have an idea of something good in your head, you don't really totally believe in your idea. So how was that journey for you? I'm quite sure it was very challenging. How do you get people to kind of see the vision that you had for the future of content?
Well, that's a good point. We were pretty convinced in our own idea. And the reason is because of the logic, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the way from the standpoint of what we did in marketing and communications, is we knew how information was going to be shared. Now, we couldn't predict it in every which way. That information sharing argued for some creativity with and reinvention of older forms of marketing, right? Mm-hmm. So, the history of advertising, it went from being very lengthy explanations to highly creative, visually driven. And then the words migrated into direct mail, right? Yeah. Or they went into PR. And so we could easily see that with rise of blogs and then social, and then ease of building good websites, there was going to be a need for deeper content. and people who want to go that layer below and engage. And then it turns out if you do engage that way, you build a stronger audience, you drive more conversions, whether that's signups or whether that's sales. So that there was a logic there.
Okay.
We were 100% sure we could persuade some really forward-thinking companies to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And now, it's old hat now. I mean, people are doing it, and then the question is, how do you evolve it? How do you do it better? How do you integrate the content, the social, the visual, and into new channels? So that's not everything is as clear as that.
Yes.
But I think when it comes to, if we're talking about brands, what's the problem you're solving? How can you be a hero to your consumer and bring them on that journey with you for a solution from the consumer standpoint? I think there's still lots of cool companies doing that.
So
Yeah.
you've laid out a few steps for how
Yeah.
you started. First, there was a clear logic behind your idea, and there was like
There
the
was.
audience and how you bring that audience along in your journey.
Right. We didn't get to that. It sounds a little bit cleaner than it was. We didn't arrive at that idea through any master process.
Okay.
But once we did think we had something, we could think it through and say this makes sense on many levels. Right. So, unfortunately, I don't have the solution for how do you get to the idea.
Yes.
Other than if you have something that you like and you don't trust it fully, I think that may just be telling you maybe you haven't developed the idea enough, you haven't sat with enough, you haven't worked with enough. And some of them you may decide I don't like it.
Yeah.
Just like when you were working with clients, we're coming up with campaign ideas or content ideas. It tend to be better if we have more time.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
To pick and choose.
I know there are many times I've
Yeah.
worked with you on strategy, and we had to kill so many ideas before we get to the final one.
You gotta kind of have fun with that part of it.
Yes.
If not, it can be painful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you started this. You and your co-founder started
Yeah.
this 15 years ago, and today
I think about more.
even more
about
than
16. Yeah, about 16.
about 16 years,
Yeah.
and now Group SGR is a global company.
Yeah.
With a global clientele and with
It's-
employees everywhere.
Yeah, what a great thing. I mean, what fun. I mean, we had our ups and downs, but really it's been a pleasure to, work with everyone. And I think, you learn how to work with people better as you get bigger and make sure you pay attention to, encouraging a culture where people can feel free to sort of say what they think.
Yes.
And we had a very flat culture, and that creates some competition for who's doing what, but overall I think it's really worked well in terms of people in the service of the strategy, and then what are we going to publish? What are we going to create? How are we going to distribute it? So I think that part's been great. And then to have success in London and in Canada and Australia and France as well has shown how the idea can be effective globally, so really across the world, and working for some really great clients.
And looking at today, your employees and all of the creative people that you have working under SGR, myself included, kind of living out their creative dreams because you didn't give up on your idea, even if you didn't have it all figured out. How does that make you feel?
I think it's wonderful, and I haven't been asked this question with a camera pointing at me before, so it makes me smile. I haven't given it a lot of thought because you just do day by day, and I think the thing that makes all of us who started it really feel good is the people who work at the firm. The cliche, the agency business, your IP walks out the door every night, right? Yeah. There's a lot of truth to that, and the people who work at SGR across the board are really creative, smart, motivated, and dynamic, and that's the key. Yeah.
But these are people who are able to do all these things because you had an idea that didn't look as big as it looks today.
I think it looked really, really small when we started, and people thought it was really not an interesting idea.
Yes.
Because the original proof of concept was a site that focused on infrastructure, so rebuilding America's roads, bridges, and tunnels, which is still obviously a work in progress.
Yes.
And that really dated back to just before the Obama administration. It was a geeked out idea, right? That all of us, Alex, Tom, Billy, and I, were all, and Margaret, we're all keen on. And we got a big audience, and we didn't know how to monetize it, but in terms of publisher talk, but we realized that there was a strategy for clients where it helped them share their knowledge in a really positive way, and that was the germ of the idea. That turned into the form of content marketing that SJR does. So it looked really small, right? we were going to try to own the writing on infrastructure. And that's how we built. So I think, and if you look at, I got around very late to reading this Peter Thiel book, which came out about 4 years ago, at 0 to 1.
Yes.
And it's on a much grander scale, talking about technological innovation as a whole. But he does talk about starting with a very targeted niche, right? A market you're really going to try to be the best in. And I think if we look back and we pull the pieces apart, we can see that's where it began.
Yeah.
And that's where it got interesting.
So there are people today who have ideas,
Yes.
so thinking outside the box, just like you did, you and your co-founders did, and probably some of them are scared that the ideas would not be believed in the world, or they don't have enough to start.
Sure.
What advice would you have to people like that who are thinking of like doing something great, doing something really nice?
Well, you do need to. There's a lot of benefits to going for it, I would say, and be prepared that you might fail, and that out of the failure might come the next idea. So if you can commit to that, and you're in a position in life where you can do that, you're probably going to come up with something good. It's maybe a little bit, smiley version of reality, but that's kind of where we went through, and it's more mentality. So whether you're trying to start an agency or a direct consumer brand, you're doing stuff that's even harder to do, in the artistic world. I think it's the process more than it is like a goal. So we years ago we put together some presentation about getting started, and which is still floating on the web somewhere. But basically, if you're thinking purely about an exit, which actually many people do, and they succeed in selling their businesses that way, which is incredible. I think it's a lot harder because you put these expectations on yourself, and that may kind of distort the steps you take.
Yeah. So remember, if you're trying or you're thinking of any idea, you probably will fail as more than you will succeed at the beginning, but out of that will come the next good idea.
You hope so, and if it doesn't work, the things don't work. But you may go back to a different role and have grown from it and be able to look at it and appreciate things in a way you didn't before. So my experience is it's worth going for it and seeing where it goes.
And as an inventor like yourself.
Inventor, I've not made our invention, but we did start something.
You did start something. And also a well-established businessman. That you can't deny.
Okay,
I've watched you done business.
Well, I mean, one of the things you learn as you grow and you start a company is you get involved in the different aspects of the business, so the finance, the operations, learning to work with people, the most important and most difficult thing to grow into. And I do think one thing that, and this is my opinion only, but of starting something small, the benefit is you get to learn about all aspects of the business, and you that's going to help you be more thoughtful about what's going to work and not. Because like if you could go back to direct to consumer, the big critique on some of the companies right now is they're spending way too much on marketing, right?
Yes.
Which brings us back to trying to come up with new ways to market. So where SJR has been very successful in that, but with the cost of advertising on digital have gone up so much, you have to be more creative. You have to be more clear on your brand. Why? What's the problem you're solving? And a lot of businesses have too many SKUs, right? Too many things on the website, too much this. So a lot of it still comes back to these like basic, principles of simplifying, being super clear about what you're trying to do.
So, like you said, being in business kind of teaches you different aspects of the business and different things. With all of those knowledge that you've gained over the years, what do you, now you have that mixed on our face.
All the knowledge, I know that's not the right way.
What do you foresee for the future of content? What is the next big thing we all should be looking out for?
Well, that's a really hard question, but a good one. I think, obviously, the rich content that we've worked on is super valid. I think the integration of it with social is important, and is sort of how do you make social a little more interesting consistently, which is hard to do because you have small pieces. One obvious place where content hasn't yet evolved to is sort of acting as the center of thinking, right? So I think what's interesting has happened is just more silos have been added as we've added more channels.
Yes.
So I think this isn't the way to go. So there needs to be some organizing principle. I think content can still be that organizing principle because it allows you to go from sort of brand on top all the way down to the different social executions with PR in the middle, organized around like what's the core knowledge we've got to share. And I think that applies to D2C brands as well, because you have to figure out why are you different and what do you solve. has to be radically simplified. So I still think that it makes sense because we're still adding channels, right?
Yeah.
Now TikTok is becoming a place where advertisers are going into, and you can share ideas in a short video. I mean, that's not what TikTok has been to date, but it could be.
Yes.
So I think that type of thinking has a ways to go, whether, virtual reality, augmented reality. I think these things, from a marketing standpoint, move rather slowly, likely to grow. There's obviously computer-generated imagery, like deep fakes, and you now can have computer-generated models and so forth. So there may be ways to create even richer worlds that aren't necessarily VR, AR, but are computer-generated in which you can share knowledge. So that educational aspect of it, more people have the power to create high-quality infotainment type stuff.
Yes.
So I think those are the directions. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff I'm missing.
Yeah.
So you got to keep your, eyes wide open.
Yeah. Just be more aware of the new technology,
I
make
think
content
so.
front and
Yeah.
center,
Yeah.
and make sure that the message is well connected.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great. And for the people, the younger generation like myself, and the many others who are following your career and from the beginning to where you're going.
This is very intimidating.
Okay, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
But for the men and women, young men and women who
Sure.
are looking up to you, what do you want them to always remember as they go forward in their own career path and also trying to build their dreams or their goals in life?
You bring your own biases to these answers. I think you want to get out of it, obviously, if you're in the marketing space and in comp space. The opportunity today is to have a broad understanding, right? So that's really new, to be able to work across channels. It didn't used to be that way.
Yes.
Used to be stuck an ad person, a PR person. We've still done that to a degree by adding social content, CRM, affiliate marketing, analytics.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you should try to have a digital MBA. I call it, whether you're a creative person or not, creative in terms of being an art director or writer, you should try to embrace it. That's one of the things I think has been great about SGR. We've seen people come in as editors, we've seen people come in as designers.
Yes.
They've grown in those roles, and we've also seen people come in as account people and then become much better at, say, understanding how to create or help edit editorial, right? And so I think you need to have those core skills across, and then you should have some areas of strength and concentration.
Yes.
Right? So I think those are the foundations you want to get in those early years. You have them. They can be applied into the changing channels, right? Those simplification, clarity of thought, writing, a good sense of creating a strong visual vocabulary. With these skills, you can apply them across, and then you can grow into all the business pieces we talked about. And people can do that. They're going to get to do interesting things.
And I have to testify to that, because when I came into SGR, I came from a PRO background with just solely PRO mindset. And diving into SGR, you get to do analytics, creative, editorial, and now I have a broad knowledge of across everything while still very focused as an account strategist. So it is definitely an advantage.
That's what I've told people, and I hope if they work at SGR and for a long time or not, that it's it's your digital MBA.
It is definitely.
There's areas where we're not as deep in, obviously on conversion.
Yes.
But broadly speaking, you can get a ton
Definitely.
and do great work.
Yeah. And I've been very lucky working directly with you.
You've done a great job.
Yeah. I have to ask you this last question. So this year, I am encouraging the audience and everyone that I meet to live a life of principle, because I think principle really, it's something that guides you. Just like you said, you have to know your message, you have to know your audience. What are some of the principles that you have lived by and still live by that kind of helps you?
I mean, I think the first principle we lived by was try to, set high standards and have a tolerance for new ideas and try to respect everyone's opinion. Obviously, at least give them a chance to grow and have an open field where people really have ideas and passion, we can let it out. Do we always do that, in practice? No, it's fairly tough.
Yeah.
But I think overall we did it incrementally better.
Yeah.
So I think that is important. I think, you want to try to be as fair as you can in the way you run the business, and as, transparent and organized as you possibly can be. Those are principles. But overall, it's, let people develop their potential, right? And that means including yourself. But others. I think that's been the core principle, in the service of good ideas. And the ideas are for the clients or your partners when you're. So those are the things that drove it, without getting into sort of the 7 habits of highly effective people type stuff. I think those are the things that that served us really well,
But
and continue to do so.
Yeah, I know for any business
Yeah.
that you're starting, you
Yeah.
have to bring yourself to it. What are some of your personal principles that have really helped you as a businessman?
Well, I mean, I think those are the same ones, but definitely, when you're in this, you really, when you're working with clients, you have a passion for helping them.
Yes.
You're really into it, and also just wanting to do good work and being willing to say, I don't think the way it's being done is right. This is how we should be doing it. We can be done more interestingly, and that's the key principle, I think, and that sort of guides everything else. Because if you have strong commitment on that part, you do other things well too.
And for that, I thank you for being here.
Thank you, IK.
Thank
Pleasure.
you for sharing your wisdom.
I don't want to exaggerate, but I appreciate it. It was a fun conversation.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope in the future we can come back and have further conversation
Certainly.
about building brands and kind of the next steps you do when you're already starting your business or
Absolutely.
like the business is already in the process.
It'll be a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Again, this is a conversation with Gift Patrick. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube page, please do. It's Gift Patrick, and you can also go on my Instagram page, Gift_Patrick_, and click on the link on my profile. I will be joining you again in the next episode. Till then, stay safe and be well. Thank you.